the table by the kitchen, and an afternoon full of meaning. Portland, Oregon. It was a late autumn afternoon, and the city wrapped itself in a soft coat of mist and golden streetlights. People quietly stepped into familiar places, escaping the chill that crept along the sidewalks. Inside the Marlowe's table, a high-end restaurant known for its perfectly seared steaks and elegant ambiance, the soft clinking of silverware blended with the gentle hum of low conversation and the rich aroma of fine cuisine. The glass door opened with a soft chime. An elderly woman stepped inside. She wore an olive green coat, held a small, worn handbag, well kept despite its age, and walked with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen the world and never let it harden her. Her name was Eunice Carter. A young hostess looked up from the front podium. "Good evening, ma'am. May I help you?" The woman gave a kind smile. "Yes, I have a reservation for one, under the name Carter." The hostess glanced at the list, paused briefly, then smiled politely. "Of course, please follow me." But instead of guiding her to the heart of the restaurant, where warm lighting bathed elegant tables in soft glow, the hostess led her to a corner near the kitchen. The table sat close to swinging doors, where the clatter of pans and the sharp hiss of steam filled the air. The lights flickered faintly above, and the scent of oil hung just a little heavier. Still, Eunice said nothing. She sat down gently, folded the napkin over her lap, and opened the menu with grace. No one in the room knew yet that this elderly woman was no ordinary guest. And what seemed like a small inconvenience, a table by the kitchen, was about to become the center of a lesson no one would forget. A silence that was anything but innocent. Ms. Eunice sat quietly at the table near the kitchen. Unlike the rest of the restaurant, this corner was warmer, louder, dimly lit, a place most diners would never choose. She kept her posture calm, eyes scanning the menu. A few minutes later, a waiter appeared. He wore a crisp white shirt, hair slicked back. His name tag read, Greg. Greg glanced at her with disinterest. No greeting, no smile. Without a word, he turned and walked away. No water, no menu recommendations, no basic courtesy. Still, Eunice said nothing. She sat with quiet dignity, waiting. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Just then, the restaurant door opened again. A young white woman in casual clothes, jeans and a hoodie, walked in. She hadn't made a reservation. Greg rushed over immediately, beaming with a rehearsed hospitality. "Good evening. So glad you could join us. Let me take you to one of our best tables." He led her to a window seat bathed in warm light, snapped his fingers for another staff member to bring water and wine, and began reciting the specials with charm. Meanwhile, Ms. Eunice remained unseen. 25 minutes, still no water. Another customer entered, an older gentleman of Asian descent, dressed in a neat brown suit. He quietly asked, "Excuse me, is it possible to have a table for one?" Greg barely glanced at him. "Sorry, sir, we're full tonight." But two tables in the center of the room were clearly unoccupied. Across the dining room, someone was watching. Marcus Carter, the sharply dressed man near the bar, sat still, but his eyes missed nothing. He watched Greg pour wine with care, then ignore his mother as if she didn't exist. He saw the hostess smile brightly at some guests, then go cold when others stepped in. He saw the pattern, the quiet cruelty, the choices made in silence. Marcus took a slow sip from his glass. His mother had taught him something as a child. If you really want to know someone's heart, watch how they treat people who can't offer them anything in return. Tonight, she was that person. Marcus could have spoken up already, could have ended it the moment she was seated near the kitchen. But he didn't, because sometimes, to reveal the truth, you have to let it unfold on its own. And Marcus wasn't the only one who noticed. The young woman at the window, was the one Greg had served with smiles, looked over at Ms. Eunice. Something flickered across her face. A pause, a question, a quiet unease. And Eunice still sat without a word. But her silence was now the loudest thing in the entire restaurant. Some truths only reveal themselves when you don't speak. From his seat near the bar, Marcus Carter sat still. To everyone else, he looked like any other guest, well-dressed, quiet, sipping a drink while waiting for a friend perhaps. But his eyes, His eyes were watching everything. He saw how Greg leaned in with charm to serve wine to another table, smiling like a man in full control. He noticed how the young woman at the window kept glancing toward his mother, her smile fading. And he saw his mother, Ms. Eunice Carter, the woman who had taught him everything about dignity, sitting alone, quietly folding her napkin as though she weren't being ignored. Marcus felt something rise in his chest, a slow-burning ache. Memories of being a boy, of his mother working double shifts, packing lunch from scratch, and whispering to him each night, "Never look down on someone just because others do. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. Just raise your standard." And now she was the one being looked down upon. He could have stepped in. He could have called Greg out the moment he brought someone else a drink first. But Marcus didn't move, because he wasn't just observing Greg. He was observing the whole system, the staff, the glances, the culture. If he stopped it too early, Greg might lie, say he was busy, say he meant no harm. Number Marcus needed the full truth to speak for itself. He turned slightly toward the back of the room. The manager, Sandra, stood at the bar preparing drink orders, unaware of the storm quietly brewing. Marcus looked at the clock on the wall. 34 minutes. That's how long his mother had been sitting without a single glass of water. No welcome, no apology, no service. And in that stillness, Marcus understood. The moment of reckoning was almost here. When patience is mistaken for weakness, truth must speak. 35 minutes. That's how long Ms. Eunice Carter had been waiting. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't waved anyone down. She just sat there, calm, composed, quietly holding her dignity like a shield. Then Greg passed by once again. She looked up gently, her voice no louder than a soft breeze. "Excuse me, may I place my order now?" Greg paused just for a second. He let out a dramatic sigh and turned away, muttering just loud enough for nearby staff to hear. "Too busy for people like that today." Marcus heard every word. The words weren't sharp, but they cut deeper than most insults. He set his glass down on the bar, not with force, but with a deliberate clink that seemed to echo across the room. He rose to his feet. No one knew who he was. Not yet. But the way he walked across the room, slow and steady, something in the air changed. It was the kind of walk that makes people turn their heads without knowing why, like a quiet storm just before the lightning hits. Marcus walked straight to the table by the kitchen. He stood beside his mother, tall, silent, then turned to Greg, who was now nervously arranging silverware at another table. "Excuse me," Marcus said. "Is this how you treat guests here?" Greg froze. He looked up, trying to smile. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize she was someone important." Marcus didn't flinch. "You didn't realize she was my mother, but that's not the issue, is it? The issue is, you didn't care who she was, because to you, she didn't look like someone worth respecting." Greg opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The restaurant fell into silence. People stopped eating. Forks rested on napkins. Everyone was watching now. Marcus turned slightly so that everyone could hear, his voice still calm, but now unshakable. "This woman raised me. She cleaned houses, worked night shifts, skipped meals, just so I could one day own a place like this. And tonight, she sat here for 35 minutes while you served everyone else. Not because she complained, not because she asked for special treatment, but because she was invisible to you." The silence deepened. Marcus looked Greg in the eye and finished. "You didn't just ignore a guest. You disrespected the very soul of this restaurant. And for the first time, Greg had nothing to say. You didn't shame my mother. You shamed yourself." Greg stood frozen, cornered not by anger but by truth. He stammered, "I didn't mean any harm. I didn't know she was your mother." Marcus didn't blink. "That's exactly the problem," he said. "You think respect is reserved for people who carry power, or wear expensive suits, or fit some idea of who matters. You think that because she's older, because she's black, because she walked in quietly, expecting nothing, that she didn't deserve the same attention you gave someone who just walked in off the street." Greg looked around. No one was defending him now. Marcus continued, his voice clear and steady. Not angry, but undeniable. Let me make something clear to you and to everyone in this room. This woman is my mother, and she is the reason this restaurant exists. Every value this place claims to stand for, hospitality, care, quality. I learned from her. People in the restaurant were listening now, really listening. The young woman by the window lowered her fork. The older Asian man near the entrance gave a small, slow nod. Marcus turned toward the front and called out, "Sandra!" The manager, a woman in her 40s, appeared quickly, eyes wide with concern. "Yes, Mr. Carter." Now it was clear. Marcus Carter wasn't just another well-dressed diner. He was the owner. "I want you," he said calmly but firmly, "to serve my mother personally, with the attention and kindness she deserved from the moment she walked in." Sandra nodded immediately, already stepping toward the kitchen. Then Marcus turned back to Greg, not with fury but with finality. "Greg, you're done here. You don't represent this place. You don't represent the kind of world I'm trying to build." There was no yelling, no insults, just a clear line drawn in front of everyone. A line that said, "Decency is not optional." Greg took off his name tag slowly. He didn't argue. He walked toward the door and disappeared into the night. And in the quiet that followed, something had changed. Not just in the restaurant, but in everyone who witnessed it. It wasn't about punishment. It was about the lesson. Greg was gone. No one clapped. No one cheered. But in that quiet, something shifted. Ms. Eunice Carter sat still at her table, her hands resting gently in her lap. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile triumphantly. Instead, she turned to her son and gave him a calm, knowing look. The same one he had seen since childhood, when he scraped his knees or stood up for someone on the playground. Marcus lowered his voice, leaning in. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have stopped it sooner." She reached out and placed her hand over his. "No, Marcus. You did exactly what you needed to do. You didn't just protect me. You reminded everyone here what dignity looks like." She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to demand justice. Her presence, her patience, had spoken louder than any confrontation. Just then, Sandra, the manager, approached the table with fresh water and a clean menu. She moved with care, like someone who finally understood what it meant to truly serve. Across the room, the young woman who had been treated so well earlier, the one seated by the window, walked over. She stopped by the table, her voice soft. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I saw what was happening, and I didn't say anything. I should have." Ms. Eunice looked up at her, eyes gentle, steady. "It's never too late to notice. Just don't forget what it felt like to see it." The girl nodded, blinking back emotion. And then, something unexpected. Applause. Not loud, not theatrical. Just a few hands. Then more. A quiet collective gesture of respect. Not just for what had happened, but for what had been revealed. Later that evening, Marcus gathered his staff. He stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen Greg had once leaned on, justify rudeness, and spoke clearly. "From this day on, the Marlowe's table will be known not just for good food, but for honoring people. Every person, no matter their color, no matter their clothes, no matter if they walk in loud or quiet." Heads nodded, eyes looked up. No one questioned it, because now they understood the difference between service and respect. Respect is not earned by status, but given through character. From that day forward, the Marlowe's table was never quite the same. Not because they changed the menu, not because of a new paint job, but because something deeper had shifted in every member of the staff and in the walls themselves. In the employee break room, a photo was hung. It was Ms. Eunice Carter sitting at her table with a gentle smile, lit by the soft glow of golden light. Beneath it, a plaque read, "No one is invisible here. No one is beneath dignity. Everyone matters." Marcus never mentioned that night again in public. He didn't want the restaurant to be known for confrontation. He wanted it remembered for how people changed, for how they listened, for how they saw someone clearly for the first time. And Miss Eunice? She returned every Sunday afternoon, still with the same worn handbag, still with quiet grace, but this time She was seated in the center of the restaurant, where the light was warmest and the room felt whole. Some guests didn't recognize her. One once asked a waiter softly, "Is that the owner's mother?" The waiter smiled. "No, she's the reason we work the way we do." There will come a time in your life when you witness something unfair, when someone is treated as if they don't matter because of how they look, how old they are, or how quietly they walk through the world. In that moment, ask yourself, will I look away or will I stand up? You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be powerful. You just need to be human. Choose kindness. Choose respect. Every time, every place,